What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're talking about the best decks in standard format of the Pokemon trading card game as of September 2021 for the Sword and Shield through Evolving Skies standard format. In this video, I'll talk about 10 archetypes that I think are the very best in the game right now, and I will also have example lists in the video for all the decks that we talk about today. Before we get into the video, shout out to my sponsor, PoTownStore.com, the best place to get PTCGO codes, and be sure to use code CELIO for 5% off. The top 10 decks in Sword and Shield Evolving Skies based on results, estimated matchup spreads, and personal opinion will be talked about in this video. And special thanks to play.limitlesstcg.com and also Trainer Hill. They help out with the data that helps me form my opinions for these. What are your top 10 decks in standard format? Be sure to let me know. Comment your top 10 decks below before watching the rest of this video. 2 people that comment their top 10 decks will each win 25 Evolving Sky PTCGO codes. This is not going to be based off of accuracy or my opinion or even what decks are in your top 10. As long as you comment your top 10 decks below, you will randomly, or 2 people will be randomly selected to win 25 Evolving Skies PTCGO codes each. So pause the video here, comment what your top 10 are, and then enjoy the rest of the video. Also, shout out to my other sponsor, PokemonCard.io. You can find all of my deck lists over there. They're free to view and export, and you can even make your own account and upload your own deck lists over there. So shout out to them, and all the links will be in the description down below, and you can find all the decks that I talk about today over on my PokemonCard.io page. At number 10, I have Ice Rider Calyrex Vmax, and also I should mention Suicune V is in this archetype and plays a pretty substantial part, in my opinion, in the way that you would optimally build Ice Rider Calyrex Vmax at the moment. So Ice Rider Calyrex Vmax still has that consistent damage output of 250 being its max damage, or just 160 max with Ride of the High King, and it has 320 HP, which is what makes it better than just running a straight Suicune V deck, because it can take a hit from most things, whereas Suicune V is being knocked out by a lot of popular attackers. So that's kind of the reason why you would play this over just a Suicune V focused deck. Playing the Ice Rider Calyrex Vmax archetype with a heavy inclusion of Suicune V, I think, is definitely a way to go if you want to have a tankier attacker. But this allows you to be out traded by other 2 prize decks. So other Suicune focus decks or Zashan decks are probably going to out trade you if you're playing this variant of Ice Rider, which is probably why it's fallen a bit out of favor recently, but it is still a strong archetype. At number 9, we have Leafeon Vmax Inteleon. I've been saying since before rotation happened that I thought Leafeon Vmax would be a very solid deck, and I never thought it would have the potential to be a tier 1 deck just because of its kind of limitations. It needs Galar Mine, it needs opponents to not play a lot of air balloons and scrappers to get rid of your jammers, it needs the meta to not have a lot of fire decks in it. And I do think the meta is quite fine for Leafeon Vmax, but I also don't think it's an overbearing archetype, which is why I have it modestly at number 9. The Leafeon Vmax is just going to try to get your Leafeon Vmax set up, have a Galar Mine in play, have Tool Jammer to negate your opponent's air balloons, and the rest is just kind of consistency and little tools here and there that help, like the Phoebe against Zamazenta, the Fan of Waves against Hiding Dark Energy, so that they can't remove their retreat costs, because that's what we're focusing on with Grass Knot. So yeah, I think Leafeon is kind of a down-the-middle archetype. It doesn't have a ton of decks that it hates facing. It doesn't have a ton of decks that it loves facing. It's just kind of a solid archetype that deals a consistent amount of damage, going around the 180 to 240 range of damage based on retreat costs and Galar Mine. So I think this deck will stay in this tier 2-ish solid deck range. I don't think it will ever be the best deck, and I don't think it will ever fall to be like a very bad deck either. It's just consistently pretty good. Next at number 8, we have Sylveon Rapid Strike Box, which this one has been gaining more popularity and having more success as players experiment with it more, and it is definitely that kind of deck that it would make sense because, let's say, a deck like Zashan Zamazenta can pretty easily be built, I'd say, but a deck like Sylveon Vmax or Rapid Strike Box, if you'd like to call it that, definitely takes more tinkering and experimenting to make the deck good. So it makes sense that it would take a little while for players to start coming out with this, but the format is still pretty new, and we're seeing a lot of different versions of Sylveon Vmax being played and being successful. So this is my list of Sylveon Vmax, and it was influenced a bit by Frank Persick to have that Galarian Meowth thrown in. So Sylveon Vmax with Galarian Moltres V, and also with Rapid Strike Urshifu Vmax has been a popular way to try out Sylveon Vmax. We've also seen Sylveon Vmax with Blaziken, with Zeraora, even with Leafeon V and Grass Energy just to accelerate energy onto the board on turn 1. So there's so much you could do with Sylveon since it has colorless requirements in its main attack and its Rapid Strike, so it has things like Rapid Strike Energy and Octillery and Tower of Waters and a bunch of great attackers at its disposal. So I'm excited to see players continue to experiment with Sylveon Vmax, and it's very good because of that versatility. Sylveon hits Urshifu for Psychic weakness. Galarian Moltres V can be included into this deck, and it hits Shadow Rider and Dragapult. Urshifu Vmax can either snipe the bench or hit things like Jolteon Vmax for weakness. So it's a really fun and creative card to build decks around. Next at number 7, we have Jolteon Vmax. So Jolteon Vmax was a card I loved experimenting with in my early testing of the Evolving Skies standard format, but I didn't have too much hope for it because I thought the format would be too overrun with Rapid Strike Urshifu decks, and those would just be so hard for Jolteon Vmax to overcome. So I didn't have too much hope for it, but I knew it was a fun deck that could also give other archetypes a lot of problems if allowed. So it turns out Urshifu Vmax, or at least Rapid Strike Urshifu Vmax, is not overly popular. It's 100% a very strong deck, but it's not overly popular because there are counters for it. There's Zamazenta decks, there's Dragapult, there's Shadow Rider, there's Sylveon. So all those things keeping Urshifu in check has allowed Jolteon Vmax to actually emerge as a meta deck. So this is a Jolteon Vmax deck influenced by Henry Brand. Vinny Fernandez piloted a similar list to a high placement at Celio Stats 2. I really love Jolteon Vmax's kind of flavor that we are doing moderate amounts of damage around the board every turn. Sometimes we can heal with Cheryl. We can ping with Quick Shooting and with Zigzagoon's Headbutt Tantrum. And eventually, if our opponent gives us enough turns, we just knock out 2 or 3 big targets and win the game that way. At number 6, we have Single Strike. You can call this Single Strike deck, Single Strike Box, Urshifu, Umbreon. Urshifu and Umbreon are pretty much always going to be included in some capacity into this deck, and then with a thick line of Houndoom, which accelerates your Single Strike energy onto these Pokemon. And Single Strike Urshifu Vmax and Umbreon Vmax complement each other nicely because Umbreon Vmax is weak to Leafeon, but Single Strike Urshifu can just one-shot it. Single Strike Urshifu is weak to Shadow Rider and Dragapult, but Umbreon Vmax can one-shot those. And also with Single Strike Urshifu Vmax, an issue is you always have to be drawing cards and just trying to get this thing to set up consistently. You never really have time to play things like Boss's Orders, but Umbreon Vmax's Dark Signal allows you to use that Boss's Orders effect without actually playing Boss's Orders. So this list is influenced by Stefan Ivanov. Stefan won Celio Stats 2 with a very similar list to this. That was an over 500 player tournament, so it was definitely a big achievement to win that with Single Strike. I've just changed one card out for a Scroll of Scorn because I really do like the Scroll of Scorn tool card for Single Strike Pokemon. It's really a great way to come back into a game if your opponent hits into your Vmax after you didn't do anything, and then you can just Scroll of Scorn and get some energies on it and hit them back really hard with that Furious Anger attack that it gives your Single Strike Pokemon. At number 5, I've got Rapid Strike Urshifu Vmax. So Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX and Single Strike Urshifu VMAX. I actually do think Single Strike has been getting a little bit more results than Rapid Strike, which is nice to be able to say that we're seeing a diversity of the Single Strike and Rapid Strikes being played. But I do think Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX is overall a stronger deck, and it has warped the meta. And if players didn't respect this deck and counter this deck, then this would probably dominate at some point. And I do think that the metagame has kind of focused around keeping Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX in mind, which is why I was more inclined to put this up higher than Single Strike Urshifu. The Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, it does so much, right? So you can rapid flow your opponent's Sobbles and Drizziles, or their Octilleries, their Chinchinos, their Houndooms, whatever support it is that they're playing. This is the list that I had created prior to Evolving Skies coming onto PTCGO, so I'm sure there are plenty of lists out there that look like this, but there wasn't like any one person I wanted to credit, because this was just the list I came up with, and I'm sure other people came up with very similar lists, because I think there's like very small adjustments that can be made to an optimal Rapid Strike Urshifu and Teleon deck. Metacham adds that cool factor with Yoga Loop that you can take an extra turn sometimes when the math adds up correctly, and Raihan's a great replacement for Karate Belt, and sometimes even better than Karate Belt. At number 4, we've got Zashan deck. So I definitely foresaw Zashan deck being good in the early days of the metagame, because it is fairly easy to conceptualize a deck list for. Players have played Luca Metal and ADP already, so they can pick up these cards and kind of hit the ground running with this kind of deck. Also, it's pretty cheap to build, and in early metagames, I typically see that players don't want to start out by countering things like a wall-type Pokemon, like Zamazenta V. So Zamazenta V is just typically a strong type of card at the beginning of a metagame. So definitely expected to see Zashan up here. It's been super popular, very successful. It's been very successful probably because of how popular it's been. That's helping it out a little bit. But I think this deck will have a fall off in the coming weeks. So I think maybe it'll drop down to like number 6 or 7 in a few weeks when we start doing October's best decks. So here's a list, and I think this exact list was created by Shuffle Squad, the players on that team. I saw so many of them piloting it, and they were the first ones I saw pilot this exact list, so I just credited Shuffle Squad's team to this list. But like I was saying, I think it's an easy deck to conceptualize, but the Rotom phones, the Double R and Guru, those kinds of things I think were popularized by this squad of players. Some people will play Rusted Shield at some sort of count. Some people will play 3 Zashan, 3 Zamazenta. Some will play Sir Chester Bath in addition to the Crystal Cave. But yeah, like I said, this deck is easy to conceptualize. Zashan's probably the best card ever printed. Zamazenta V walls out people that don't have an answer for it. So strong, simple deck. At number 3, we have Suicune v Ludicolo, and this is one of the ones that I could not have guessed. This was not on my Evolving Skies bingo card, and neither was number 1, but we will get there. But Ludicolo being on my first top 10 decks of Evolving Skies format video. Like, I do one of these every month, so I knew I would be making one of these a couple weeks after Evolving Skies, and I could never have guessed that Ludicolo would be up here, but here we are. So Gabriel Sametto popularized this exact list and the Suicune Ludicolo when he won, I believe he won the first post-rotation Chill TCG tournament the week leading up to Celio Stats 2, and then Suicune Ludicolo saw a great finish at Celio Stats 2 as well. But yeah, so it turns out that when you pair it with the Inteleon engine and Scoop Up Net and Rare Candy, that you can actually use Ludicolo pretty consistently to reach the numbers that you need to with Suicune V's Blizzard Rondo. For those who don't know, Ludicolo, when you evolve it, you can choose to have your basic Pokemon's attacks do plus 100 damage this turn. So that means Blizzard Rondo can do a max of 320 with the help of Ludicolo's Enthusiastic Dance. So definitely a surprise card out of Evolving Skies, finding its way up to the number 3 paired with Suicune V. At number 2, I've got Shadow Rider Calyrex Vmax, and often it is being paired with Alchemy Vmax. Shadow Rider Calyrex Vmax is one of the best cards probably ever printed as well, and I don't want to sound like I say that a lot. They've just been printing a lot of busted cards in Sword and Shield. So Zashan V I did just say it about, but Shadow Rider Vmax as well. It accelerates energy, it draws cards, and it attacks, and it has high HP. It resists one of the strongest Pokemon in the game, which is Rapid Strike Urshifu. So yeah, it's got a lot going for it. This is my list. Again, I don't think Shadow Rider Alchemy lists really have a lot of room to change around, but there are Shadow Rider without Alchemy lists that I've seen that are a little bit more unique. They play higher counts of Articuno and then some other text like Tool Jammer or Tool Scrapper, sometimes even Path to the Peak to get through a Zamazenta. But I think this deck is just very powerful and consistent. It is being countered a bit because of a lot of dark attackers, and then Zashan being so popular, hitting Alchemy for weakness, and you have to play Phoebe Palpad to get through Zamazenta. So it's another deck that I think would be running the format if people didn't respect it. And that's why I have it at number 2. And number 1, boy, this wasn't on my bingo card. Dragapult Vmax I have at number 1, folks. Dragapult Vmax. So, how did we get here? Well, one rainy day, I presume, possibly there was a kangaroo frolicking outside. Henry Brand decided to build a Dragapult Vmax deck and take it to a late night series tournament held by Zach Lesage on play.limitlesstcg.com, and the world was never the same, or at least for the last week and a half in the post-rotation Sword and Shield format on PTCGO. So Dragapult Vmax turns out to be quite good in this format. It's Psychic type, so it hits Single Strike and Rapid Strike Urshifu for weakness. It resists said Rapid Strike Urshifu Vmax. It does 260 to those because they're weak to it, and the 5 damage counters plus the combination of that with quick shooting and Teleon turns out to be really great in this format because so many people are running the Sobble, Drizzile, and Teleon engine. Some other decks are running things like Houndoom for Single Strike or Octillery for Rapid Strike. There's a lot of little bench sitters to pick off with Dragapult Vmax, and Dragapult Vmax doesn't need abilities outside of Inteleon Drizzile, so it doesn't need rule box abilities, I should say, which means Path to the Peak works very well with this deck, and the deck is low maintenance, so you don't mind having low hand sizes. So Marnie works very well with the deck, so you can Marnie Path to the Peak every turn and then just start spreading damage around as you please. I actually think some decks may start running the 70 HP non-Rapid Strike Sobble based on how much Keep Calling helps their deck, so that they can survive Dragapult Vmax Max Phantoms more often, because a Zigzagoon plus Max Phantom on turn 2 knocks out a Sobble, but if players start using the 70 HP Sobbles, that will no longer be happening. They will also need to scoop up the Dragapult player. So yeah, Dragapult Vmax has been popular. It has been successful. It has even been successful in the tournaments where it was not popular. Example, Henry Brand winning that very early post-rotation format tournament on PTCGO held on play.limitlesstcg.com. So Dragapult Vmax is my number 1 deck for the Evolving Skies format in September 2021. This is my full list today for the top 10. Going from 1 to number 10 is Dragapult, Shadow Rider, Suicune, Zashan, Rapid Strike, Single Strike, Jolteon, Sylveon, Leafeon, Ice Rider. And yeah, those are my top 10 decks for this format right now. It's pretty diverse. It is a lot of Vmax and a lot of Vs. But I've personally been having fun, but this isn't really a subjective video. We're just talking about what the best decks are. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And of course, shout out again to my wonderful sponsors, PotownStore.com and PokemonCard.io. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for daily Pokemon TCG content and leave a like and a comment if you did enjoy the video. It helps the video reach more new viewers. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. And I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.